Hi, I'm Eleanor Dallaway with Infosecurity Magazine, and I'm joined today by Bob Tarzey from Circa, Brian Honan from BH Consulting, and Javvad Malik from 451 Research. So we're here today. Welcome to our Analyst panel. I'd like to start by asking the most obvious question, perhaps, which is, what are the biggest trends that are happening in the information security industry right now? And if we could start with you, please, Bob.
Okay, thanks, Eleanor. I think one of the things that we've been looking at and organisations need to be increasingly aware of is the use of targeted attacks to penetrate their organisations. That is the use of malware and other methods to impact an organisation for some reason that is specifically tailored for that particular attack. Much harder to spot than generic malware and stuff like that. And we've seen a big increase in the degree to which that's happening.
Sure. What are your thoughts, Brian?
I agree with what Bob was saying there. We are seeing criminals becoming more and more focused on their targets and be more focused on how quickly they can generate revenue. Because at the end of the day, criminals are in it for the money, and they're running as a business and so they want to keep their costs down and their return on investment up. So they're looking at how they can hurt companies the most and where they can get revenue the most. So the attacks we're seeing quite a lot happening are more denial of service attacks, whereby they're trying to extort money out of companies, but also ransomware attacks, where infecting computers on networks, on systems, encrypting them, and then demanding money to get the information back. So, back to what Bob was saying, there's a more focus on the criminals towards what they're looking for, and as organisations, they need to be more prepared for that.
And it's not just criminals; it's also hacktivists. That's activists using online methods to damage organisations in some way for perhaps political reasons rather than financial ones.
That's certainly something that we're seeing is a very popular topic with our readers at the moment. Javvad, what are you witnessing at the moment?
So other than what these fine gentlemen have already mentioned about the targeted attacks, another thing that's sort of like a sub-trend, which is the smaller or medium enterprises that are pretty blind in this whole affair. They don't have the same resources to protect themselves, and so we're seeing like greater visibility where they are looking into their own sort of internal infrastructure in detail and finding they've been compromised to a far wider degree. At the end of the day, that's still where a lot of the bread and butter for a lot of the criminals lie. They can go into smaller vendors, smaller companies, extract a bunch of card data, monetize it very quickly. So that's another sort of sub-trend that we're definitely seeing.
So this question is somewhat of a cliche, and I'm sure you've been asked it a million times, but it's an important one. Who's winning at the moment? Is it still the black hats, or are the white hats getting in there and catching up? Bob?
It's an arms race, and normally the bad guys are always a step ahead, but not that far ahead. I think the interesting thing that's happening is if we look at nation-state type attacks, that's where actual governments are investing lots of money in producing malware to attack each other. Eventually, that gets down to the black hat level and gets used by hacktivists, criminals, and stuff like that. So there's some pretty sophisticated stuff out there that's got to be countered. So I would say they're always marginally ahead, and always will be.
So 1-0 to the black hats?
I didn't say 1-0. Maybe 190 or something like that.
Would you agree with that, Brian?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I actually don't like that question, because when you say who's winning, it implies there's an end game and there's going to be a result, that somebody is going to be victorious. Security is never an end game. Security is always ongoing. And as Bob has said, criminals develop new attacks, we have to defend new defences. So that's always going to be ongoing. So I wouldn't see it's anybody's winning. I would say it's a very highly contested, evenly matched game at the moment. But I would say that in order for us to start being more victorious, or if you want to use that phrase, is that we need to stop looking at solely security as being a technology problem, and it is a business problem, and look at how we work together, both the businesses, law enforcement, and politically across different nations, and how we get rid of the people behind the attacks as opposed to stop the attacks themselves, because the attacks are a symptom of a bigger problem, and if we treat the disease, the symptoms will reduce as a result.
Very good advice there. Javvad, would you agree? Are the black hats winning?
I think it's a very binary question, and the real world isn't binary at all. A few years ago, Josh Corman coined a phrase called H.D. Moore's law, that was the rate of attack increases at the rate of metasploit. and basically what that means is that you can take a very sophisticated attack and you can package it into a module for metasploit, and basically that's the level of your script kidding. So if anyone knows how to use a simple attack tool like metasploit, that's the level at which they can attack. And the question is, you look at the number of modules that are added to it on a weekly, monthly basis, do organizations' security capabilities increase accordingly? And probably not is the answer.
Sure. So this afternoon in the keynote theatre we have a CISO skills panel going ahead. Just wondering what your thoughts are on what's the biggest challenge facing today's CISO?
I think the problem that they've got is that in the old days, security was about securing infrastructure that they largely were responsible for and knew where it was. These days, CISOs have got to secure the use of IT, which is spread across a range of internal and cloud-based resources, with users all over the place, many of them working with IT systems from outside the perimeter. Many of those users are no longer employees of the organisations who's trying to secure the applications that are being accessed. They have external users, their customers, their partners. So you've got these very complex chains of users linked together in business processes that need protecting, and that's the job of the CISO to do that. It's a hard one, big challenge.
It's not an easy job. Brian?
I'd echo a lot of what Bob has said as well, but also highlight that CISOs need to move away from the technology and more appreciative of the business and understand what the business is so that they can make security be more relevant to the business and promote security as being a core part of how modern organizations should be doing business today. So it's not a case of let's protect just the technology, it's how can we support the business and how can we enable the business to do the things it wants in a secure way.
I think the CISO of today is woefully, as a generalization, they're woefully ill-equipped to actually deal with the problems. They're not very skilled. They come from a very technical background. They don't understand the business context very much. And very few have I ever seen have been very effective at implementing positive change within organizations. So if they carry on this current path, I see it as pretty much a redundant role within the next 3 to 5 years. Possibly. Okay.
And my final question, I believe you're all making appearances in the keynote theatre at some point this week, but if you were the Infosecurity Europe content manager and you were in charge of the education programme for this year's show, bearing in mind that the attendees of the keynote theatre are information security, the end user community, what 2 topics would you each make sure were on the top of your programme? Bob?
Well, there's a whole range of stuff that needs to be in there, but I'll pick 2 that I think we've been looking at closely recently, which reflect partly the fact that we've been writing reports in this area, is that there are things that are a big concern for organisations. One is to understand the changing nature of the threats, and we talked about targeted attacks. Some use the term advanced persistent threats for certain types of targeted attacks, but to understand why these attacks would impact your organisation. And you talked earlier about SMBs. SMBs have to understand that when they're in a complex business process, interaction with larger companies online, they can be the soft underbelly of that process, and they may be attacked for that very reason. So there needs to be a broad understanding of that. The second thing I would put a session in on would be the importance of identity and understanding identity at all sorts of levels, understanding the identity of your external users, your internal users, being able to have federated management of them, but also understanding the use of privilege and controlling that better.
Absolutely, thank you. Ryan?
Well, I'll take a slightly different tact in what I'd recommend, because no matter what, each year you come to Infosec, there are new threats, there are new trends, and new, if you go to any of the stands each year there's something new. It's the cloud one year, it's big data this year. So there's always something new and different. But the new and shiny is not where we're getting hurt. It's the old threats. It's the basic things we're not doing right. We're not patching systems right. We're not training people properly. All those things is where we're failing. And if we maybe try and take a root cause analysis of why that is happening, I would say the 2 skills that a lot of CISOs need to look at and what would be good for people is marketing and PR. How do you promote
Interesting.
security in a positive way in the business? How do you show security is bringing benefits to the business? How do you manage PR in the event you do have a security breach, both internally in the organization so that users aren't panicking and the business isn't panicking, but also externally when you're trying to deal with media, stakeholders, press, and regulators as well. So I think key skills are being able to market what you need to get done so that you can get more budget and you can get more resources for what you need, and the PR to show the positive side of what security can bring to the business too.
It's definitely a session I'd be interested in attending. Javvad, what would you put in your programme?
The two areas I'd put in, I suppose, from a security perspective, I'd like to see my old bugbear is security, user awareness, employee awareness, and not just restricted to employees of an organisation. This is an issue that's far wider. It's a societal issue now. It extends beyond the employee to your family members, to your friends, everybody. So something around that, some more public access type knowledge. The second area that I would really like is to have a channel dedicated to people to come and speak who aren't from security at all, but from the business. So they can come and explain their side of the fence, what their challenges are. A CIO level saying what how they're balancing budgets and how they perceive security to be. Because it's very easy for us to say we think the business are doing things wrong, but they often have a very good rationale that we often don't get visibility to.
Some great ideas there. I might steal some of them for the magazine. But thank you all very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.